talking about bankruptcy. And I know that can spook a lot of people, but hopefully with Jeff's guidance and information today, we will be on the right path of the truth, and knowing is always half the battle, right, Jeff?
Absolutely.
So we're especially glad to have Jeff here as our special guest and subject matter expert. Now, Jeff, feel free to introduce yourself so our attendees can get to know you.
Well, Dan, thank you very much. And thank you to Catherine and obviously Yingsa for inviting me to speak with your clients. My name is Jeffrey Goetz. I am the head of the bankruptcy and reorganization practice at the Bradshaw law firm, one of the few 100-year-plus old law firms here in Iowa. I've been here 100 years. I've only been here about 20 years, so I'm a newbie for being in Iowa. I'm board certified in both consumer and business bankruptcy law by the American Board of Certification. And like many old dogs who don't want to learn new tricks, I basically just do bankruptcy and reorganization, representing debtors, creditors, committees, trustees in bankruptcy and reorganization cases. I will say, though, that my bread and butter is primarily representing businesses as debtors and primarily small businesses. Small business being defined as businesses with under 50 million in assets or debts. And I know that sounds like a lot, but that's the definition we use for small and medium enterprises. And that's it for me. If you'd like to see my detailed bio, the hyperlink below will take you to our firm's website.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Let's jump into our first question, Jeff.
Sure.
Can you give our audience an idea on how you approach and advise clients suffering from financial distress in their personal lives and in business?
Sure. First thing that I would say is, and this applies whether it's legal or accounting or anything in life, ask for help.
Yes.
Ask for help from your helpers. Who are your helpers? That's your circle. That's your family. That's your folks that help you in business. Can include your, priest or rabbi. Everybody has a different set of helpers. In this circumstance, when we're talking about small businesses, I refer to helpers as those who have been your accountants or bookkeepers, any lawyers, or any other financial advisors, anybody who might have helped you get the business off the ground. Right. And the help, going to the helpers is the first thing, because sometimes we don't want to even ask for help. First step, you got to go ask for help. The second thing you want to do here is you're faced with decisions, and you want to make your decisions in as informed a manner as possible. Informed meaning you got to have the information. So in today's world, I refer to it as get the data. Know the facts about your, for example, financial health. And if you have a business that has many employees, you have to get the facts with regard to from a human resources position. And if you're operating a business such as a restaurant who's trying to deal with 25%, only 25% of your customers can come in, You have to look at it from an operational basis.
Mm-hmm.
With regard to the folks that we work with who do come to us for advice and counsel, when they're feeling financial distress, getting the financial information is important. Obviously, I represent and counsel a lot of folks, and I've seen everything from businesses that have their accounting and bookkeeping in software, and they can generate reports, and it goes all the way down to those who have do their books and records in a spiral binder with a pencil. So everything in between there. But the main point is, if you're going to deal comprehensively, you want to be informed and have your decisions be based on as much information as possible. Third, like many things in life, you can go and start running, or you can have a strategy. My recommendation is you formulate a strategy based on the facts, based on the data, not based on guesses or estimates or conjecture. And then once you've got your strategy done, then you implement your action plan. An action plan could be something as simple as writing down the steps, and after each one, you check the box and you move on to the next step. Obviously, this is applicable for small businesses who find themselves in financial distress, but also these lessons apply to many instances in life.
Yeah, across the board, for sure. And speaking of strategies, our next question is, what are the most common legal and financial strategies that you advise your clients who are suffering financial distress?
Sure. Once we know what the situation is, we've established the business is in financial distress, and we're able to quantify and make determinations as to what are the triggers, what are the causes. For example, when a small business comes to me initially and I listen to what their problem is, I generally try to put their financial condition in three categories. One is, are you current or are you behind in your tax obligations? That could be anything from payroll taxes to property taxes to sales taxes. That will dictate one particular strategy. Second, is your financial distress being caused by your secured debt? And by secured debt, we mean bank loans that are secured by some assets or collateral, such as a car loan, meaning you don't pay the car loan, they get to take the car.
Right.
So secured debts are very specific, and there are a lot more rules with regard to what your rights are and what the lender's rights are. And then the third type of financial distress we find is your general unsecured claims, your creditors who just bill you every month, whether it's the telephone company or your utilities or Napa Auto Parts, anybody who gives you regular credit. You agree, they give you the product, you agree to pay in 10, 20 days, but if you don't pay them, they don't get to take their collateral back. So first thing we do is we try to determine what categories do we put your financial distress. Now, from a strictly legal perspective, first thing we look to is are there self-help options? For example, let's say the small business has fallen behind in its payments on one particular credit card, and the credit card company says you missed a payment or you didn't make a large enough payment. Self-help would include saying to the credit card company, hey, listen, I'm going through some problems right now. Might be COVID related or something else. I have the ability to pay this credit card, but I need a little relief. If you will allow me to make interest-only payments for 6 months, that will get me through this tough time, and then I'll be prepared to go ahead and start making regular payments of both interest and principal. So that's one example of self-help. The next is what I would call an out-of-court workout or settlement. And what this is we look at the situation, usually it's a more complex type of situation, and we say, we talk with the creditor or creditors, and we propose a plan. Some call it a business plan. I'm going to call it a workout plan. And let's say a business is, again, suffering from the effects of COVID, less customers. Business is still open. Let's try to work out so that instead of the bank calling in the note and closing my business, give me a little relief. I'll continue making some payments, maybe smaller ones, but you don't sue me, and I'm not going into bankruptcy. We're working this out consensually. And again, anecdotally, for the last 8 months, many banks are in fact working cooperatively with their clients because they know that the clients are suffering, and it's not for being a mismanaged company or squandering the assets. The banks know everybody's going through the same problem. So you have the opportunity to talk with your creditors and try to work out a settlement. What happened, what happens if we can't do out of court workout? Well, now we see that there are options available to reorganize. Reorganization is different than bankruptcy. Reorganization is the opposite of liquidation. So liquidating, close the business down. Reorganization, keep the business, make it more lean and mean, and emerge with a plan that your creditors and other interested parties have some stake in. They've participated in that. Chapter 11 is the bankruptcy reorganization section for businesses. Chapter 12 is for family farmers. And Chapter 13 is for individual wage earners. Now, finally, worst case scenario, liquidation. That is always the last option. That's basically saying the business cannot go on. It doesn't need to go on because you can't keep losing money forever. And the liquidation process marshals assets, divvies them up to pay creditors pro rata, and then distributes that evenly and fairly to all creditors.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and follow up and ask this question here, Jeff. What are the advantages and disadvantages regarding small business bankruptcy reorganization? Can you explain more about that?
Absolutely. In 2005, Congress made some major changes to the bankruptcy code. And as a debtor attorney, I look at that primarily and say that Congress changed the bankruptcy laws to be more creditor-friendly than debtor-friendly. They added some sections, and they added one for small businesses. As a practitioner in this field, although they attempted to create special provisions for small businesses to make it easier, faster, and cheaper for small businesses, they actually complicated things and in some respects made it harder for small businesses to reorganize. Now, the good news is that last October, there was a series of bankruptcy laws that were changed. And one of those basically added a subchapter for small businesses. And shorthand, we call that Subchapter V. Now, what Subchapter V did was attempt to fix some of the things that made small business reorganizations harder and make them easier. Most importantly, though, is that with the new Subchapter V provisions, there were essentially three things that changed the playing field and made it more likely that small businesses would be able to reorganize faster and cheaper and more efficiently and effectively.
So
one of the things that I don't want to do here is get too deep in the weeds. I want to kind of give an overview.
I understand.
But Subchapter V, one of the best parts of this was regular small business bankruptcy, you're almost forced into paying all of your unsecured creditors 100 cents on the dollar over time. The Subchapter V change eliminates the need to ensure that all unsecured creditors have to be paid in full. And that's a really, really big leverage for small businesses who want and need to reorganize. That would be what I'd say.
I know there's only so much we can cover in half an hour, Jeff, and can you give us a 30,000-foot view of the Chapter 11 process?
Absolutely. Let me start off by saying Chapter 11 is generally deemed a large legal proceeding. It's very powerful. Depending on the nature of the business, it can be a complex legal proceeding. And another way of saying it's expensive is to say it's not cheap.
Yes.
The general goals of going into Chapter 11 is the underlying premise is I've got a good business, a viable business, even a profitable business. My current situation has put some gates in front of me, some hurdles, some blocks. And if I just have a little breathing room to maneuver and avoid the consequences of all my creditors jumping on my back at the same time, give me a little breathing room. I really feel confident that I'm going to be able to propose a plan of reorganization. The plan can be, since every business is different, every business's plan is different. There's certain frameworks, and I'll call it the four corners, that all Chapter 11s have to fit within. But there's a lot of flexibility. And the goal here is to go in to Chapter 11, get some time to reorganize, negotiate, if possible, with your creditors, propose a plan of reorganization, solicit support for that plan from your creditors, and then asking the court to approve that plan. In legal terms, we call that confirmation of the plan. And when I talk about getting creditor buy-in, the process actually includes the ability of creditors to vote a ballot. I support or I don't support. Now, I sort of put into three big categories the types of Chapter 11s that businesses go through. One is what I'll call a true reorganization. And that reorganization, as I say, is give me some relief. I'm going to slim down the business. I may make some changes from management, operations, a change in our financial procedures, and then emerge leaner, meaner, and stronger of a business. The next kind of Chapter 11 is what I would refer to as an orderly liquidation. Now, if you're forced to sell your assets or sell the business as a going concern, you're probably going to be stressed, not have enough time, and risk not maximizing value for the benefit of creditors. In Chapter 11, if your plan requires, let's say there's a business with two subsidiaries. One subsidiary is profitable and the other is not. It may be that the plan provides for liquidating or selling the non-profitable business and keeping the viable business. I call that a hybrid, where you reorganize some of it, but maybe you dump some of your non-performing or burdensome assets. So we've got true reorganization, an orderly liquidation, or a hybrid of those two. Now, I also reference here for your viewers here who live in the Des Moines area,
Right.
they remember the Dolls supermarket chain. And we represented Dolls and took them through a Chapter 11. Now, in the case of Dolls, we did not reorganize, but we did an orderly liquidation through a sale. And we sold the business as a going concern. Going concern sales generate more value than closing it, selling the refrigerators and the parts and everything else.
Right.
Now, the reason Congress has made these provisions for reorganization is because there's a societal value to preserving value, to avoiding liquidation, forfeiture, destruction of value. And in the case of Dolls, we sold the business as a going concern. The various communities still have those supermarkets there, although owned by somebody else and under another name. And in that case, we preserved, I believe it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 out of 900 jobs. Wow. So from a societal perspective, there's value in encouraging reorganization as opposed to liquidation.
That's amazing. I mean, Jeff, I am so glad that you joined us today in this very insightful webinar today, and it couldn't have come more timely. And folks, take a screenshot of this page right here. You want to contact Jeff. He's our subject matter expert. He's done this a long time, and he can make sure that you are in good hands. And so you are not spooked out about this whole process of bankruptcy. Know your options, know where you want to go, and Jeff can help you get there. If you guys want to contact us because you just want to, then we will forward your question over to Jeff so Jeff can answer those accordingly and help you. So feel free to email Jeff directly or Catherine at Community CPA. So for those of you that joined in the middle of the webinar, you guys are wondering, why is this guy wearing a mask? And as I mentioned in the beginning, it serves a dual purpose, right? The first purpose is for the webinar today. Don't get spooked out. Halloween's coming up. I know we're living in a Halloween-like year all year long, right? But You have to be in the know to be able to get through your problem. So I commend you for joining us today and getting the information that you need to know how to go through this process in this very difficult time. That's it, folks. Thank you so much for joining us today. Jeff, again, huge thanks. And we hope
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
hope to do this with you again soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody. Have a good rest
Take
of the
care.
day.